Start. Video on.
Good evening to all. On behalf of AHMP India, I welcome all the delegates and our speaker, Batmasri Dr. B. Mohan sir, for today Patient Education Program, Series 2. Sir is going to talk on the topic 100 years with diabetes, hype or reality. I request Professor R. Ramakrishnan, Treasurer of our AHMP, to warmly welcome our speaker and give brief introduction over phone. I request, please Ramakrishnan sir, please go ahead.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You can proceed, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Who's this?
This is Manasi, sir. You can start the welcoming Dr. Mohan, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Mohan.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mahalingam. Good evening, Rastam sir.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, Arad sir. Good evening, Arad sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. We can hear you. Please proceed,
Hey,
sir.
you, sir. Please proceed. Some technical issue, I think.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Ahalingam, do you want to proceed? Because I think we've lost.
Yes, sir. You can. Yeah. I requested Dr. Mohan sir to start his session. Everyone knows Dr. Mohan is
Just a minute. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, கேக்குது, sir. You can start introducing, sir.
Enema?
You can start introducing, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. இப்போ நான் இதில் அப்படியே பேசுறேன்.
ஆமா, அப்படியே பேசலாம். Everyone can hear you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Dr. Mohan.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mahalingam. Good evening, Rastam sir. And good evening to all who are participating in this program. Many of our members in AHMP are aware of the purpose and objective of AHMP. It is a very healthy platform created for the benefit of healthcare professionals and general public. And the platform provides details of the latest happenings in the healthcare domain. We are trying to achieve this through periodic programs on most relevant and current issues in the healthcare domain, and invariably they are all handled by reputed experts in the respective field. I think almost we are averaging about one program every 1 month or 45 days, and in May 2021 we do a small plan to create certain level of awareness among the general public, particularly the patients. So we call it as a patient education program. It is called a 6-part series. The first part of the series was done last month. Today we have the second part in a short while, and we're extremely grateful to Dr. B. Mohan to have kindly considered your invitation to come and give a talk on the second part of this patient education program. I feel very honored to introduce Mr. Dr. B. Mohan to you all. As a matter of fact, Dr. Mohan does not need introduction, because not only within the country, but in many countries throughout the world, Dr. B. Mohan is a well-known personality, and his name is synonymous with diabetic care. He is a chairman and consultant diabetologist at Dr. Mohan's Diabetes Specialty Center, which is an IDF center for excellence in diabetes care. For the kind of qualifications and experience and contribution he has been consistently making in the field of diabetology, many laurels and accolades have come his way. I will share a few samples with you. There are many. It will take about half an hour to talk about all the accolades that he has to say. To sample a few, gentlemen, he is ranked among the top 0.4% scientists in the world. 0.4% of scientists in the world, and top scientists in India in the field of endocrinology and metabolism. He is a recipient of Dr. Harold Rifkin Distinguished International Service in the cause of diabetes. It's an award given by the American Diabetes Association. Dr. Mohan also is a recipient of Dr. B.C. Roy National Award by the Medical Council. Not only that, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Centenary Award from the Indian Council of Medical Research has also come his way, the highest award for biomedical research in India. As you know, he is the resident and director, Madras Diabetes Research Foundation, Asia's largest diabetic research center. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh, that is FRHC. There are further more credentials and encomium, but due to paucity of time, I stop with this brief introduction of Dr. V. Mohan. Thank you, Dr. Mohan, once again for accepting our invitation and be part of this evening. Thank you. Welcome to you all.
Sir is on mute. Sir, kindly unmute yourself, sir.
My cursor was not working. It's not now.
Yeah.
I just managed to unmute it. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And I would like to start off by thanking. I'd like to thank Mahalingam, a good friend of mine for many years now. He has been organizing these wonderful programs. In fact, he tried to get me earlier also, but due to some other clash with the program, I had to postpone it to today. Thank you, Mahalingam. And I can see that you have a very distinguished group of doctors and healthcare professionals with you. There's a very unique association for healthcare management professionals. I don't think there is any such association. And therefore, I'd like to thank you and the organizing committee for inviting me to deliver this talk. In the interest of time, I'll go on with my presentation. So this is my agenda for today's talk. I'll first talk about the current life expectancy of people with diabetes. Then I'll ask the question, is long-term survival of diabetes possible? And then show you how it is possible. And then finally end with the mantras to live to 100 years despite diabetes. So let's start with what is the current life expectancy of people with diabetes. Now, these are reports from UK as well as from Canada. And in 2010, one report from this is about 11 years ago, a report from the United Kingdom showed that people with type 2 diabetes have a 10-year reduction in their life expectancy. And in the case of type 1 diabetes, usually children getting type 1 diabetes, it is reduced by at least 20 years. That means even now with insulin and with all the advances in insulin therapy, still children with type 1 diabetes or adults with type 1 diabetes have 20-year reduced life expectancy. In 2012, a Canadian study showed that in type 2 diabetes, about 6-year reduction in the life expectancy in females and 5 years in males. So whichever study you take, it shows that people with diabetes have a reduced life expectancy. What about Indian data on mortality in diabetes? There are very few studies actually published on mortality in diabetes. Now, the first study was from our group, which we published in 2006. This was a follow-up study of an initial very small study that we had done in Chennai. It's called as a Chennai Urban Population Study, or CUPS for short. This, in fact, was my first population-based study. As a clinician, I used to earlier do only clinical work. In 2000, we started taking a little earlier, actually, 1996 itself, we started working on the population-based studies. We started first with a selected population in Chennai. That is a convenience sample, and in the hierarchy that is given the lowest rating when you take a convenience sampling. But even so, it is better than a clinic-based sample, where in the clinic-based sample, you get a lot of referral bias. It depends on who is referred to your clinic. So in that study, we first published the initial papers, and then we followed up these people for a 10-year period. And then we showed that mortality rates were twofold higher in people with diabetes compared to non-diabetic subjects. This we published about 15 years ago in 2006. But as I said, the total number of people in the study itself was only 1,400 or so. And then we had to follow up these people, and about 1,000 people could be followed up. So it's a relatively small study. But even in that study, we're able to show that the mortality rate is double in people with diabetes. Then the next study that we took up was a very large study, totally representative of the whole of Chennai. We had a very large sample size, and this is called as the CURE study. CURE stands for Chennai Urban Rural Epidemiological Study. There are about 26,000 people in this study. And then after finishing the first round of this paper, this study was tremendously productive. As you can see, this particular paper published in PLOS One is the 150th paper from this one study. I don't think in India any study in any field of medicine has produced 150 papers. So this is a marvelously done study. And this is a follow-up study, 10-year follow-up, where we took the original cohort and followed them up for 10 years. And then we tried to look at the mortality and see how many people died, what did they die of, what was their baseline characteristics, all these things we did. In this report, which was published in 2018, much after the other study that was published in 2006, is 12 years later, this is about 3 years ago, we published this. And here we've reported that excess mortality due to diabetes is higher in relatively younger people. So what does that mean? If you get diabetes when you're 50 or 60 years old, then you're not going to die earlier due to diabetes, because the diabetes you get itself is a much milder diabetes. And this we proved last year when we published for the first time a unique classification of the types of type 2 diabetes in our country. And we showed that this type of diabetes comes in older age group. We call it as MARD, mild age-related diabetes. They don't seem to have any extra problems. Whereas those who get it young, if you get it when you're 20 years old and 30 years old, then you still have an excess mortality due to diabetes. And we also showed the causes of death in this particular study. And what we showed was that renal disease contributed the maximum deaths. That means kidney failure was the commonest cause of death, apart from, of course, heart disease as well. Now, I'm not going to the details of these studies, and they're all published in standard journals, and you can look them up if you want to know the cause of death. Now, I'm getting into the subject of today's talk. What is the current life expectancy in India? I'm not talking about people with diabetes. I'm talking about life expectancy in India. Now, here is a report published from the World Bank in July 2018, 3 years ago. So if you look at United States, the average life expectancy in the US is about 78 years or 79 years. Whereas in China, it is 76 years. So you can see that China has caught up with the US. And now the average life expectancy is 76 years in China and 78 years in the United States. In India, some of you may be surprised to know that at the time of independence, our life expectancy was only 35 years. Okay. And this is just at the time of independence. The British left us, our life expectancy was 35 years. Now, just to explain that point in scientific terms, it didn't mean that when 35 years came, everybody died. It's not like that. Life expectancy is calculated based on the mean. Now, suppose somebody lives for 70 years, somebody lives for 1 year, then the average becomes 35. And we used to have a lot of childhood mortality. In the British days, when we had infectious diseases, children below 5 years, out of 5 children or 10 children, only 2 or 3 survived. You would have seen, if you look at your uncles or your grandparents' generation, they'll say he had 10 children, but only 2 survived, 8 died, you know. So like that, because of the number of deaths at very young age, your mean life expectancy comes down. So at that time in India, the life expectancy only 35 years. Over a period of time, due to better health, due to better nutrition, due to better healthcare facilities, due to many other factors, people started living longer. Now in India, it's rapidly climbing. Just 10 years ago, it was only 60 years. Now it's become 67 years in males and almost 70 years in females. So we're catching up with China. And the prediction is that about 10 or 15 years from now, people will be having a mean life expectancy of 74, 75, 80 years and so on. So a lot of elderly people are going to be there. And that's thanks to better health, better nutrition, and better many other things, health factors, which I'm sure you're aware about. So in 2016, it was 67 years and 69 years. Now, remember this figure because it has a lot of importance to what I'm going to talk about. Now, if you take the population pyramid of India, now this is from 0 to 4 years. What is a percent? This is in 2019. What percentage of people in India are between 0 to 4 years, 5 to 9 years, and so on, up to the line drawn there is 90 years and above. Okay. The dotted line there at the top is 90 years. We don't have to go that far. Look at 65 years. Okay. If you take 65 years and above, the total percentage of people in India above 65 years of age is only about 5%. So for those of us who are above 65 years, and me included, it's humbling to note that we are among 5% of the Indians who are alive. Naturally, when your mean life expectancy is 67, how many people do you expect to live above 65 years? So this is startling figures. These are government figures, and these are population of India figures produced by the government. I'm not making this up. But now if you push that further and go to 90 years of age, how many people in India are above 90 years of age? It is 0.001%. So if you know of somebody who's finished 90 years of age and is alive in India, they belong to the 0.001% of the population. But if you actually do the mathematics, 0.001% of 1.36 billion people is actually 13.7 lakh people, or 1 million people, 1.3 million people. So there are 1.3 million people in India who are above 90 years of age. The 0.001% is actually 1.3 million people. Remember, in the whole of Mauritius, there's only 1.3 million people. Okay. In India, those above 90 years of age, 0.001% is already 1.3 million people. So anything you calculate in India, the numbers are staggering simply because of our population. But remember this figure because that's the percentage of people without diabetes, general population, who live above 90 years of age. You can remember the title of my presentation was, can people with diabetes live up to 100? Okay, I'm not even talking about general population is almost zero there. Okay, and I'm talking about, can people with diabetes live up to 100 years? Obviously, it's a provocative title, and I'm showing you the exact figures. Now, let me go back to the mathematics which I just did. I just told you that the lifespan of India is 67 years for males and 69 years for females. Most of the studies abroad, including our own, have shown that overall diabetes reduces the lifespan. So the many studies have shown that diabetes reduces life expectancy by at least 7 years. I've told you that. Even the Canadian study was 7 years. Okay. So what does it mean? A male to live beyond 60 years with diabetes and a female to live beyond 62 years with diabetes would be very rare, would be extremely rare in India. Okay. That means if you find any diabetic who's above 60 years of age, who has had diabetes for a long time, they would be most unusual people. And here I am talking about whether we can live up to 100 years of age. Now let me come to the question. Okay, having given you all this, is long-term diabetes survival possible? I was aware of all those facts, but then I run a very large diabetes center. As you may know, we have 50 branches all over India, and we have almost 500,000 diabetic patients, 5 lakh diabetic patients in our electronic records. And from day one, we have been running electronic records. So we have the world's largest diabetes electronic system in the world. So when periodically we keep doing these studies and trying to take out data. And one of the things which we did was I used to see people who are 70 years, 80 years, 90 years coming to me. So I asked the question, can people with diabetes really live so long? Okay. So I looked at the world literature and there was not a single report of type 2 diabetic patients having lived for 40 years. I searched every paper in the world and there was not a single paper where more than 40 years survival of type 2 diabetes was reported. Type 1 diabetes, it's common because children get it when they're 4 years old, 5 years old. To live up to 45 or 50 years of age is not unusual. In fact, the Jocelyn Clinic used to give 50-year medalist program. So if you live for 50 years as a child with diabetes, they give you a medal. Okay, and recently we also gave those medals, as I will show you. But I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is supposed to come at an older age group. So how can you live for 30 years and 40 years? So abroad, till today, as we speak, I have not seen a single case report or any paper showing more than 30, 40-year survival in those with type 2 diabetes. Because they get it at a much older age group. We in India get it at a much younger age group. So type 2 diabetes comes at a much younger age group. So this is a question, is long-term survival of diabetes possible? And the answer is yes, if you follow the A, B, C, D mantra. Okay, so what is this A, B, C, D mantra? A stands for HbA1c, the blood sugar long-term diabetes control. If it is less than 7%, if the blood pressure is less than 140 by 90, if the cholesterol and LDL is within normal limits, if there is D stands for discipline, where we brought in diet, exercise, no smoking or tobacco, moderation in alcohol use, and stress reduction, of which the most important is, of course, a little bit of diet and exercise, and of course, no smoking or tobacco. If you're able to follow this A, B, C, D, I believe that people with diabetes can really have a long and healthy life. You may say, how do you say all this? Are you just making this up? A1C less than 7, BP less than 140, 90, cholesterol, LDL within normal limits. How do you know all this? First of all, before I answer that question, I'll show you the data. But before we answer these questions, let us ask, are we meeting these goals today? A, B, C, D, in our population of diabetic patients, are we meeting these goals? Let's see. So this is the ICMR India diabetes study. I told you we started with the CUP study, then we went to the CURE study, representative of the whole of Chennai. Then we got bolder, and thanks to my daughter, Dr. Anjana, who was even more ambitious than I was, she said, let's do the whole country. Let's do every part of the country, every state in the country, urban, rural, population-based study. When she put up that idea, ICMR liked it. And ICMR said, if you're prepared to do it, we will fund it. So she actually took on the whole, the task of doing the study. And now, of course, we have collaborators in every state in the country who are the principal investigators. Some of them are authors in this particular paper. And just this morning, in fact, we had the 100th anniversary of insulin celebration. And I was asked to talk about this in-depth study at the ICMR meeting. And it was only this morning I presented it. And if you go to Twitter, I think they've already posted it. ICMR has already posted it on that, the 10-year results of the study. But in this particular paper, we're looking at glycemic control with respect to HbA1c in India. How many people have HbA1c less than 7%? We studied that in the INDIAB study. And here are the results. Now, shown here is those who have good glycemic control. I told you the A part, HbA1c less than 7%. Only 1/3 have HbA1c less than 7%, both in urban as well as in rural India. And these are based on state-wise in India. Every state has been studied. Now, if you look at the next one, it is between 7 to 9. If you look at the extreme right, it is those who had poor control, defined as HbA1c more than 9%. And if you have HbA1c more than 9%, you are bound to develop the complications of diabetes. And you can see that almost 40% of people in rural India and almost 1/3 of people in urban India have HbA1c more than 9%. This is not a clinic-based study. This is a population-based study where we are showing that in the whole of India, the control is not good and only 1/3 of people have their diabetes under control. Here is another study we published about 6 months ago, 8 months ago, I think. This study was done in 3 cities, the whole of Chennai, the whole of Delhi, and the whole of Karachi. So we had 3 cities in South Asia studied, and we looked at those who had diabetes, and then we looked at the ABCD. How many had HbA1c below 7%, blood pressure less than 140/90, LDL cholesterol less than 100, and how many were not smoking? All the 4 had to be satisfied. And that's what I said, ABCD mantra, all the 4 have to be satisfied. We found to our disappointment that only, and this is a large study, almost 15,000 people in these 3 cities, we found that only 7% of people with diabetes had all the 4 goals. That means 93% of people had not satisfied all the 4. Of course, 30% could have had A1C under control. Another 30% could have had blood pressure under control. Maybe 30-40% could have had the LDL under control. And maybe only 20% was smoking, let us say. But the same person has to have all the 4. And if you have all the 4, you take into account, only 7% had it under control. So this is not good. We have to do a long way to improve the quality of care of people. And it's not just in one city. In the whole of South Asia, it seems to be the same. Finally comes the million-dollar question. Okay, you're saying A, B, C, D and all that. What is a proof that if they do all this, people can live long and healthy lives in spite of having diabetes? Do you have the proof? You can ask me. As a matter of fact, I do. And that's why the title of the paper is given like this. This is the paper which actually made a lot of headlines because it reports on the clinical profile of long-term survivors and non-survivors with type 2 diabetes. It's published in the topmost the diabetes journal in the world, which is called Diabetes Care. This has the highest impact factor among all diabetes journals in the world. It's an American Diabetic Association journal. And it was for this paper that I received the Harold Rifkin Award. Harold Rifkin Award, by the way, is supposed to be one of the highest awards given by the American Diabetic Association. And when I got the award, I was a little surprised. But they told me, you know what? It is for your contribution and showing that people with type 2 diabetes can live so long in your series, which even in the US, we have not been able to show. And that's true. 2013, we published it. 8 years later, no other country has shown. And very humbled that in India, with all the primitive, the things that we have, and despite our poverty and despite everything else, India was able to show to the world that people with type 2 diabetes can live long. What is the mean duration of those who survived? It was 43 plus minus 4 years. So almost 44 plus minus 4 years. Many of them had crossed even 50 years duration. Now I have some people who have crossed 60 years of duration with type 2 diabetes. How many did we have? Is it 1 or 2 people that we had? No, we had 238 people. Now, how is it I was able to get it? Because we had medical records at that time when I analyzed of more than 200,000 patients. So by going through these 200,000 patients, I was able to pick out 238 patients who were able to live for 40 or more years with diabetes, some more than 50 years. Now, the paper actually became an instant hit. And that is because the editor had told me, when I first submitted, I only submitted the long-term survivors. He said, you know what? You have no competition in this. Take another 6 months if you want, but include a group of non-survivors as a control group. Find out why they died and why these people lived. Then your paper becomes a classic. If you simply say these people survived, it doesn't mean anything. Maybe simply they survived. So you'll have to compare the survivors with the non-survivors. And what we concluded from this paper, I'm not again going into details, but what we concluded, a very detailed paper. So what we concluded from this is that long-term survivors with type 2 diabetes had better glycemic control. What is that? A, HbA1c, A. Better blood pressure control. What is that? B. And more favorable lipid profile. What is that? C, cholesterol. So the A, B, C, I didn't make it up. It actually came from this particular paper that we have better blood pressure control, sugar control, A, B, and C, glycemic control, blood pressure control, lipid control, you can live longer. Okay. And they also use more statins and everything. Okay. Oh, here is the data. I'm showing you some of the data. If you look at the survivors, which are shown in white, this is those who had HbA1c less than 7.6. Look at the percentage of people among the survivors compared to the non-survivors. Again, look at the HbA1c more than 10.5. The majority of people, almost 37% of the non-survivors had very bad control of HbA1c, whereas the very few of the survivors had such poor control. Again, if you look at LDL cholesterol, those who had normal LDL cholesterol, the majority were type 2. If you look at those who had very high LDL cholesterol, it was the non-survivors. We had data like this for blood pressure and for everything. Now, that paper was based, a 2013 paper was based only on the years of survival, not on the age of the patient. So somebody could have got diabetes when they are 20 and then lived up to 60 and he has finished 40 years duration. So it still doesn't satisfy this criteria that I started off by saying 100-year survival, is it possible? Last year, we published another classic paper, and the title of this paper was Clinical Profile of Elderly Patients Above 90 years of age with type 2 diabetes seen at a diabetes center in South India. Again, published in an American journal. It's called Diabetes Technology and Therapeutics. Again, when this paper was published, there was no such paper reporting on 90 years and above. People have to have 90 years. And if they got it when they're 85 and they become 90, that doesn't hold at all. They should have minimum 25 to 30 years diabetes. And then they should have lived up to 90 years or more. Only then they qualified to be in this particular group. And we also had a control group of those who are 50 to 60 years. So we had a control group and we had this group above 90. And then again, we compared them. Again, by this time, we had 470,000 patients. And that is how we were able to pick out quite a large number of people. I think we had 325 patients who had lived 325. Let me repeat again, 325 patients who had completed 90 years of diabetes. Okay, 90 years and above with more than 25 to 30 years of diabetes. And so we got this unique cohort of patients. And then in this group also, we looked at why they survived. And the same answers came. If you control your diabetes better, blood pressure control is better, lipid control is better, you're able to live to 90 years and above. I want to show you a picture of some of these survivors. Now that's my daughter and that's me. Okay. We gave them what's called as a Victory Over Diabetes Award, winning at 90, we called it. Now, this is just one small group. We couldn't get them all together because of their age. But look at them. They are, the majority, and this was taken, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, I think, when we organized this function. They all came walking, except Professor Chitti Babu, whom many of you may know. He crossed 100 years of age. And after he crossed 100 years of age, he invited me for his 100th birthday. I went home. And for this function, he was a chief guest. He came as a chief guest. Okay. And you might know this gentleman. They've given me permission to talk about them. That's why I'm talking about them with their name without hiding their names and so on. This was a former chief secretary of Tamil Nadu, Mr. Sabapati. He is now, I think, 98, 99 now, I think he is, running 99. And when he came for this function, he was 96, almost 97 years old. In fact, the previous year, at the age of 96, he wrote a big book, okay, a huge book, and he released it only 2 or 3 months before he came. He has a fantastic sense of humor, very, very sharp man. All these people whom you see here are above 90 years of age. Only one person has died in this, and that is Chitti Babu. After he completed his 100th birthday when he was running 101, he actually passed away. All the others are now marching toward, most of them, all of them are now above 95. Many of them are 97, 98, 99, and 2 more patients have now crossed 100 years of age, and they're all doing well. They're all perfectly in perfect physical health, mental health. They're able to walk. 1 or 2 of them are in a wheelchair, but otherwise they're all walking and talking, and they have very good memory, and they have very good health, and they've all had diabetes now for 30, 40 years, and they're all doing very well. So when I started off by saying, is 100 years possible? Is it a hype or a reality? Now I'm sure you'll all agree with me that yes, it is a reality, at least for some. It is not something which, only one person I saw, one swallow doesn't make a summer, as they say, but there are large numbers of people, and I'm seeing more and more people now who are crossing into their 90s and soon will be 100 years of age. Now you may ask, what about type 1 diabetes? I already told you that type 1 diabetes abroad, long-term survival has been reported by the Jocelyn Clinic and so on. In India, in my father's time, my father, as you know, Professor Vishwanathan, was the first diabetologist of India. He started the first diabetic clinic in Stanley Hospital in Chennai, in India, in 1948. That is the first diabetic clinic. In his lifetime, he has not seen people with type 1 diabetes even live for 50, 60 years. They normally died when they're 40, 45, 50, they normally died. I slowly started seeing them living longer and longer, thanks to better control. And slowly I started seeing people who are also living for 60 years, 65 years, and so on. So this paper, it's under I've submitted to the same journal, Diabetes Technology and Therapeutics, is under review. It should be published quite soon, where we reported on the clinical profile of long-term survivors with type 1 diabetes now. The other one was type 2 diabetes. This is type 1 diabetes. That means they all got as children, okay? And they're all on insulin. And lifelong, they've been taking 3-4 injections of insulin, sometimes even 5 injections of insulin. But they're all alive now. And I had some collaboration. Dr. Dharmarajan gave me some cases from General Hospital, from Government General Hospital and MMC. Some of them, this is from Calcutta, these 2 people. This man is from Ahmedabad. So I got a few cases from Cheryl Salis gave some cases from Mumbai. So they gave me small numbers of cases, but the largest number actually comes from our own center and from our own records. And in this paper, I have 78 survivors with type 1 diabetes who crossed 40 years duration, 40 years of duration. And out of these 78, 58 had lived from 40 to 59 years, 12 had lived from 50 to 59 years, not age, with diabetes, 50 to 59 years of diabetes, and 8 individuals who have survived 60 years or more with type 1 diabetes. And out of these 8, 1 lived for 60 years and unfortunately died now, but 7 are alive. So as you may know, this is the 100th year of insulin, 2021. In fact, this morning, those of you who get the Times of India, I've written an article on insulin in India and when it came and how Banting and Best discovered insulin in July 1921, exactly 100 years ago. In fact, 27th July today is a date when they announced their discovery exactly 100 years ago. So today to the date is 100th year of insulin. So I also wanted to see, and of course, Jocelyn and other clinics had beaten us and shown us that these children can live. But in India, people said, no, they live only 20 years, 25 years, they all die. I told you, even in the Canadian study and British study, 20 years life they lose. So how can you have long-term survival? So I made this countrywide effort to find them, and we found these 78 people with type 1 diabetes who had lived for more than 40 years. And these 7 people were alive. So last Saturday actually, I decided to honor them. Okay, and so we had a function on 17th of July where I instituted what's called as the Dr. V. Mohan Victory Over Diabetes Medal, the Dr. V. Mohan Victory Over Diabetes Medal, just like the Jocelyn Medal. And for the first time in India, we honored these people. And here are the people. 2 of them. This is the longest surviving person in India that I know of, Mr. Hirachan Sawane. He is from Nagpur, and he is now 88 years old, and he has diabetes for 74 years. Both of them have crossed 70 years with type 1 diabetes. He got it when he was 14. Today he is 88 years of age. This is Mr. Krishnasamy. He lives in Chennai, and he was associated with the British Council for almost 30 years or so before he retired. Many years ago, he retired. He is 87 years of age, and he has had diabetes for 70 years. He got diabetes when he's about 16, 17, and now he is 87 years of age. So now I know of two people in India, one from Chennai and one from Nagpur, who have lived 70 years and they're still alive. And Mr. Krishnasamy attended the function that day, whereas last week. Whereas Mr. Sawane, I got his details only 2 hours before the function. So I couldn't, call him, I couldn't get him on to the Zoom meeting. But subsequently, I've talked to him and I'm giving him the medal anyway, the Dr. B. Mohan Victory Over Diabetes Medal. Now, these are people who have finished 60 years with type 1 diabetes. Meena Fernandez, she got diabetes when she was 12. She is 72 years old now, very healthy, hale and healthy. She's from Mumbai. Miss Usha Diman, she's from Delhi. She also has type 1 diabetes of 60 years. And then Prasanna was treated by my father. He is from Coimbatore, he's a photographer, and he has completed 60 years of diabetes. He got diabetes when he was 7. He is now 67 years old, and he has been living with type 1 diabetes, hale and healthy. This is Mr. Rajiv Kaikar. He has also crossed 60 years with type 1 diabetes. Remember, they're all taking 3-4 injections of insulin per day for the last minimum 60 to 70 years. So the last part of my talk before I end is, what are the mantras? Having seen these people both with type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes, and they're almost reaching 100 years of age now, what are the mantras to live up to 100 years despite diabetes? First one is to detect diabetes early. If you don't detect diabetes early, within few years, these people will develop complications. And then only you will start treating them. Then it's too late. You must detect it early. From day one, keep the ABCD under control. Again, to repeat, A1C below 7%, blood pressure normal, cholesterol and LDL normal, and discipline, which is diet and exercise. I showed you those old people who are above 90 years of age. When the press came to meet them, they were asking them, have you eaten even one sweet in your life? And they were joking. They said, I had sweet even yesterday. So it's not that they have never eaten even one sweet in their life, or they have been, absolute like Swamiji's or like a saint they lived. They're not like that. And they're not, athletes, they're not, champion athletes who took part in Olympic Games. They used to walk 30 minutes every day, reasonable diet, but they came for regular follow-up. That's very, very important. They came every 3 months, 4 months for follow-up they came. And that is one of the most important things. And from the first 10 years are very, very important. Nobody knows this, but through our records and analysis, we found the first 10 years are very important. If during the first 10 years diabetes controlled well, very rarely do people develop complications in their lifetime. On the other hand, if the first 10 years are lost, it's very difficult to prevent the complications. Exercise regularly, eat reasonably healthy diet, and reduce stress. Most importantly, as I said, regularity of follow-up is very important. At least 3 to 4 visits a year, to a minimum of 3 visits a year to the diabetic clinic. That also we published. What if you don't come 3 times? Come only once a year or once in 2 years. These people develop complications because it's not enough. Sugar will go up, then you will try to bring it down. Another 2 years, you won't see them. It's a losing game. Okay. If one follows these mantras, even people with diabetes can hope to live up to 100 years of age. Now, this is a quote. I started working in diabetes when I was 18 years old. I joined my father. Those of you who have read my autobiography will know the whole story. When my father left Stanley, he wanted me to help him. I wanted to do English literature and not become a doctor. But then he kind of told me that he needs help. And being the eldest son, I joined him. So when I joined him, one of the first things he told me was this: a well-disciplined and controlled person with diabetes is often better and healthier than one without diabetes. This is a statement my father made. When I was about 18 years old, and you can imagine when I'm a teenager, I was a little bit rebellious. I say, life expectancy is very short, and you are saying they can live healthier than people without diabetes. Don't tell me all this. I used to argue with him. He used to say, no. Actually, he didn't have proof, but it was only a belief that he had. If you really control well, they can live that long. He had his studies, but he didn't. I'm talking about 30, 40 years ago. He didn't have all this follow-up data, and people. We didn't have all these medicines. We didn't know so much about science. We didn't know anything. There is an era where he think, but he had this belief. Today, I know he's right because I'm seeing it today. I'm able to see it, and therefore I believe that this is actually true, and he was right. And his wisdom, even in those days, I salute now. Jai Hind. So I'd like to stop here. I'm very proud that we were from India. We've been able to show something for the first time, show that people with type 2 diabetes can live very long. And also now with type 1 diabetes, I don't think any one center in the world has shown both type 1 and type 2 diabetes living so long. So with the grace of God, we've been able to achieve this. And it is my dream that every diabetic patient should be able to live up to 100 years of age with good health. And I believe that if we can show it in a few hundred people, why not now try to achieve it in everyone? All it needs is a little bit of discipline, good knowledge about this, and I think regular checkups where we are able to continuously follow them up and advise them and motivate them. And if you're able to do that, I think it is definitely possible. So I'll stop here and I'll stop sharing. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a great presentation by you as usual. We have some questions from the participants. It is displayed in the screen.
Okay, so I'll read them and I'll answer them. Yes, can diabetes cause dark black spots in the calf region and cause itches? HbA1c is 8%. Now, this is what is called as diabetic dermopathy. If you look at the legs of a person with long-term diabetes, more than 15, 20 years, you'll find these dark black spots. Actually doesn't produce itching. Itching, if you have, then it's a definite different skin problem. Probably you have fungus or you have something else, and you'll have to, or maybe just dryness. But the dark black spots are called diabetic dermopathy. Small micro infarcts, because the capillaries are getting infarcted, and therefore you see that thing. It's a harmless condition. You can leave it alone. But if you see that, carefully look for eye complications, kidney complications, microalbuminuria, neuropathy. Carefully screen for that, because it means you've got very long duration. Somebody who has only 5 years and 10 years, many of these 60, 70-year people who might showed you, they may have this on their legs, but it has not affected them. And HbA1c of 8 is definitely high. I told you we should get it to 7%. Why some people develop resistance for conventional anti-diabetic agent long time also? Please advise good diet plan in your opinion. Type 2 diabetes, reason for insufficient metabolism, age factor, which one? A lot of questions in this. Well, people develop resistance to anti-diabetic drugs mostly when their lifestyle goes out of control. So they start eating as they like, and when they eat more, they take one more pill. Then they'll eat more and they'll take one more pill, and eventually the medicine stops working. So that is the commonest cause. Secondly, if you don't do exercise, your muscles are not kept in good shape. You develop fat, especially in the liver, in the muscle, in the adipose tissue, around the heart. The fat, ectopic fat will develop. Then you develop insulin resistance. And tablets don't work, and after some time, insulin also don't work. If you do regular exercise, and if you cut down on your carbohydrate intake, take less of chapati, less of rice, less of idli or dosa, but take more of vegetables, more of protein, and more of green leafy vegetables and so on, and some fruit, you'll be having a much healthier diet. A diet plan for a diabetic patient, very simple. When you have your plate, the thali, don't put the rice. Let's talk about breakfast, lunch and dinner. Don't put the rice first on that. Rice and sambar, rice and rasam, rice and curd, rice and this, it'll go on and on. Instead of that, take your plate and half the plate, fill it with vegetables, different colored vegetables if you're able to get. Or even if you have only one vegetable, take half that plate of vegetable. That will give you enough minerals, vitamins, iron, and all the essential nutrients like B12 and everything that you need will come from that. Quarter of the plate you should keep for protein. If you're a non-vegetarian, you can take fish or white of the egg or chicken. If you're a vegetarian, you can take Bengal gram, green gram, black gram, rajma, mushroom, all these kind of protein and fiber rich foods. So quarter of the plate has gone for that. Half the plate has gone with vegetables. Now 1/4 is left. There you have 1 chapati, maximum 2 chapatis, or you can have a few, 1 cup of rice, maybe a small cup of rice. That is enough. That much carbohydrate you have is enough. You will find your energy doubling. You will find that your muscles are building up. You have more stamina. You will have. You won't feel sleepy. You won't feel dull and lack of energy. You won't feel all that. If you take too much of carbohydrate, this is what will happen. Eventually, the carbohydrates, we keep on taking too much, your medicines will stop working. Can diabetes cause neck pain and shoulder pain? Shoulder pain, yes. You won't be able to lift your hand. So that is called diabetic periarthritis. It affects the shoulder, the very common cause. And so once you control your diabetes and do some physiotherapy, it'll become all right. Otherwise, it'll become frozen shoulder. Then you might have to have an injection into the joint. But if you're doing regular exercises, you keep doing that and keep your sugar under control, you will not have. Neck pain, it normally doesn't cause, but if you have cervical spondylosis due to age and uncontrolled diabetes, you can get that. What is your opinion? Can the life expectancy who did not meet, it's gone. Can you go back? Please go back to previous one. What in your opinion can be the life expectancy people who did not meet ABCD goals but start meeting these goals from now? It's too late. I'm afraid. That's why I said the first 10 years are very important. See, remember, when you have uncontrolled diabetes for 5, 10, 15 years, and you totally have it uncontrolled, the blood pressure is uncontrolled, sugar is uncontrolled. Unfortunately, what happens is the coating of the arteries start taking place. Your heart starts getting blocks. Your brain starts getting blocks. Your nerves start getting affected. Your eyes starts getting affected. Shankar Nethralaya, I can see many people are there from Shankar Nethralaya. So retinopathy sets in, nephropathy sets in, microalbuminuria starts. Now, after all these are already damaged, after all the systems are already damaged, now I'll become very strict with my diet. What about all the damage which occurred earlier? Now if you turn over a new leaf and now of course, you may slow it down a little bit more, but you may not be able to completely prevent the complications. I would put it the other way. Suppose first 20 years you are very, very, very strict. Okay, now you are loosening up. Oh, now I'm going to think. It will take you another 10, 15 years for the complications to come. So at least next 10, 15 years, it will take you through the first 10, 20 years time. So if you ask me from day one, the control must be very good. No, that doesn't mean, oh, I neglected for 20 years and now it's no use. Now I give up everything. Not like that. You can still slow it down to some extent. And if you're lucky, if you're genetically, you don't have the risk for complication, you may still escape. Okay. But it's always better to start early than to start after 20 years, because majority of people who start after 20 years, they go on to develop complications. Next one. Can you enlighten on Indian studies on quality of life of diabetes and psychosocial status? There are some studies on quality of life of diabetes. In fact, one of my students is, I don't know whether she's in this call, she's actually doing work on the quality of life, Dr. Aarti. So she's looking at that. And there are some studies in India which are looked at quality of life. The quality of life, particularly in those with type 1 diabetes, is a little bit more difficult because they have to keep injecting so many times. And because of that, they feel that, even there are many people who are very, very positive, even with type 1 diabetes. But some people get depressed. I'm taking the insulin so many times. How many times will I take it? So some people, their quality of life becomes. The quality of life actually goes down only if you develop complications. If your kidney gets affected, suppose imagine your eyesight is gone, one eye is gone, other eye half is gone. Okay, how can your quality of life be good when you cannot read, you cannot watch a thing, you cannot see the newspaper, read the newspaper, you cannot see television, you cannot work on your computer? How will your quality of life be good? So the quality of life depends on whether you have complications or not. If you are a person who is well controlled, if your diabetes is well controlled and you have no complications, your quality of life is almost like that of a person, even better. They lived up to 80, 90. You saw those old people. Did they look as if their quality of life was bad? They were all doing very well. Kindly enlighten on the role of diet and lifestyle modification in the reversal of pre-diabetes and diabetes. Yes, pre-diabetes is a condition where it is eminently reversible, because normal stage is there, diabetic is there, and pre-diabetic is in between. So if you don't take care from pre-diabetes, you will progress to diabetes. if you really take good care, you lose some weight, you start exercising, you do some pranayama, you do yoga, you're very careful with your diet, and if you're overweight, you lose weight, you can become normal again. So reversal of pre-diabetes is very easy, and we have shown that, we have published that, we've done everything. Once you come to diabetes, in the early stages, you can reverse it. I know if you go to social media, everybody is talking about reversal of diabetes, and people are talking about it, not even doctors. Some fellow starts one program, one diet program, some crazy diet program, he'll start and he'll say, reversal, reversal, reversal. You can reverse it, but after 3 months, you'll be back again, and that's actually bad, because you went from high to low, from low to high, from high to low to low to high. They'll be always experimenting. Keto diet, paleo diet, this diet, that diet, Atkins diet. Every 3 months, they're on some diet or the other, instead of following a normal diet, which all human beings took. All those 90, 100-year-old people, they didn't go on keto diet to live for 60 years, 70 years. They ate the normal diet which they had in the house. They never went on a single diet, and yet they lived. So it's not necessary to have extreme diets and kind of crazy kind of diets to live and so on. And reversal of diabetes, it occurs, it's fine. As long as you live for 100 years, why do you bother whether you reverse it or not? All those people who are having diabetes or who lived up to 100 years, did they reverse? Not one of them reversed. They're living with it, but they lived up to 100 years and they're doing well. So why do you bother if you still have it's not a technical thing. You're not going to get a gold medal in the Olympics, in the Tokyo Olympics, where you reverse, so here, take your gold medal and go. No, that's not how it works. You're supposed to have a good quality of life. You're supposed to live healthy. So for that, it's reversal. If it occurs, it's good. If you lose weight, for those who are obese and you lose weight, you lose 20 kilos in weight, 30 kilos in weight, you can reverse that. How many people have 30 kilos to lose? They don't even have. Many of our Indians are thin. And so how do you reverse? So reversal is very easily said, but it's not so easy in practice. My mother was recently diagnosed with diabetes 3 weeks back. Her blood sugar was 147. Yesterday it was 257. HbA1c 11.7. See, so quickly, is it possible to have high levels HbA1c in newly diagnosed cases? Of course you can have. I have seen HbA1c of 21. Can you believe it? I've had blood sugars of people with 1,000, 1,100 come to me. And so we see extreme cases. So 11.7 is like an average blood sugar when patients come to me. It's not at all very high. But this shows that she has missed the diagnosis for a very long time. She's not recently diagnosed. You think she's recently diagnosed. She must have had it 5 years ago, and she did not know. It's an asymptomatic disease, and therefore it is increased. When it reached this level, you have. But why in 3 weeks after knowing it is 147, it went to 257? I don't know. If it 3 weeks ago it was 147, it should have been 100 now. Why you allowed it to go from 147 to 257? I have no clue, and it should not have happened. But to answer your question, yes, it is possible to have that. 11.7 is not at all the highest thing. It's an average sugar with which people come to me. Otherwise, they don't come to me at all unless they have this much. I'm an optometrist. I have a question. Is there any specific duration patients develop retinopathy? Generally, it's about not less than 5 years. And usually after 10 years duration. If you look at the average duration when they develop retinopathy, it is 10, 12, 8 years, 20 years. That is the thing. But among these people whom I showed you, the 60-year-old and 70-year-old, almost 90-95% of them don't have a single microaneurysm in the eye. They finish 60 years, 70 years, 70 years. Yes, you heard it right, 70 years. Not one microaneurysm in the eye. How do they do it? They manage. Maybe they have a genetic thing which protects them. We don't know. Maybe it's not all due to their credit. It may be also there's some genetically, God has blessed them with some genes which don't develop retinopathy. I've also seen people who have actually had only 2 years duration. They're only 15 years old. And so they could not have had it for 20 years. They're only alive for 15 years. They're only children. But with 15 years already gone blind due to diabetic retinopathy. How did that happen? That means they've got a very bad gene for developing diabetic retinopathy. Okay, we don't know what those genes are exactly. We've been studying them. Jiva studies, so many genetic studies we've been doing. We've not found the exact gene, but there is definitely genetic, because we find in their family, many will have retinopathy. There are some families where nobody will develop retinopathy. 50 people in their family, not one will have retinopathy. There are families where by 10 years duration, everybody is having proliferative retinopathy, needing laser or even retinal detachment and so on. So that can happen. Oral insulin possible in the future. Oral insulin, why future? They have already tried it. And in fact, Biocon in India is one of the world leaders in that. And I worked very closely with Kiran Majumdar-Shaw and Biocon trying to do this. Twice we have attempted it, twice we have failed. But that doesn't mean we're going to give up. We are still going to, it's called Trego pill. a pill with insulin in it. We are still trying, and we are not completely given up. Maybe oral insulin will come. But one thing, once weekly insulin is going to come. Icodec. I have mentioned that in today's Times of India article. Those who have not seen my Times of India article, please read it. Page 6 of the Tamil Nadu edition has that article on insulin, its discovery, and why you should take. What about brown rice and continuous glucose monitor? Brown rice is something which we have been working on for many years. We published many papers on that. And brown rice is definitely healthier than white rice. It is unpolished rice, and that's why it's brown. The glycemic index is lower. Fiber contains a little bit more. It contains more B complex, and it's definitely healthier. People don't like it because of the taste and the feel and the chewy nature and the fact that it doesn't stay long in the shop. It gets rancid very easily. But those who like it, it's definitely healthier, and brown rice is what our forefathers used to take, and therefore it's very good. CGM, I'm glad you asked about CGM. Continuous glucose monitoring was a dream for us many years ago. Today, continuous glucose monitoring has become a reality. We have a small patch, like a small coin like that, only this size, and that size coin, like a 2 rupee coin, that you can put it on your hand. And when you fix it in your hand, it continuously reads blood glucose every minute or 5 minutes. It will read blood glucose and it'll give you graph after graph after graph. Otherwise, you have to poke yourself to either from the vein or from here to take. Here, no poking, nothing. Just stick it on your hand, and then you can continuously get glucose reading. We have done on thousands and thousands of patients. It's very, very useful. So based on that, a new index has come. See, earlier we knew about fasting blood sugar. We knew about postprandial blood sugar. We knew about HbA1c less than 7. Today, there's a new paradigm called as TIR, or time in range. You measure the 24 hours and you see how much of it is within range. Should not go below 70, shouldn't go above 180. So that is called time in range. If 70% of the day your sugar is under time in range, TIR, you will not develop complications. Your HbA1c will automatically come to below 7%, and you're protected from retinopathy and nephropathy. So we are now routinely using this CGM to monitor our patients. What is the role of glucose tolerance test? GTT, it's called. The GTT test is used at the diagnosis if you are not a known diabetic. You come to a clinic and say, tell me whether I'm diabetic or not. Do you have any symptom? No, I don't have any symptom. Do you have family history? I have some family history. My uncle had, my mother had something. Okay, then GTT test is the test for you to do. But if you walk in with all the symptoms, you're having all the symptoms of sugar, and when you just do a random test like that, your blood sugar is already 300. You don't need glucose tolerance test. You've crossed that stage. You unfortunately missed a few years, like the lady who they presented in the earlier one. So who had HbA1c of 11.7. If you have HbA1c of 11.7, your fasting is 257. You cannot do a GTT. If you give glucose to that lady, she'll go to 400, 500. It's unethical to give it. But in early cases, when your sugars are on the borderline, to find out whether it's pre-diabetes or normal or diabetic, GTT is still the gold standard, and you can use it. My grandmother was recently diagnosed at the age of 70 and my mom at 50. So is there, and it's obviously genetic, any ways to slow down the effect? If your grandmother got it as 50 and your mother got it at, 70 and mother got it at 50, remember you may get it at 30. That's called the phenomenon of anticipation. Every generation, it comes higher, a lower and lower age because the genetics is getting stronger and stronger. And therefore, you should start checking when you are 20 years old. Because if you check it when you're 40, by the time you will be diabetic. And then you miss that pre-diabetic period which you talked about. So you should start checking, you and your generation, everybody, all your siblings and all that, should start checking quite early. And then if you start regularly exercising, if you have a look at your weight and maintain ideal body weight, if you cut down your carbohydrate without eating too much of carbohydrate, little limitation carbohydrate, little excess fiber, little excess protein in your diet, you can prevent diabetes for 10, 20, 30 years. That means in your lifetime, you will not develop complications. One day I can show your picture and say, see, this person has crossed 100 years of age and is doing well. How about jackfruit for sugar patient? Now, it's not jackfruit, which you would have heard a lot of noise about, and Prime Minister listening to somebody talking about this. It is green jackfruit and the powder of that, which that person claims cures diabetes. I've looked at the data very closely. There was a 0.2% reduction in HbA1c, 0.2%. And with that 0.2%, he claims diabetes is cured, diabetes is reversed, diabetes will never come, diabetes will hold from India, diabetes will be wiped out, all kinds of things. He claims a 0.2% reduction in A1C. So for that 0.2%, if you want to take it, please take it. Reduce your rice and take little of the jackfruit. But it's not jackfruit fruit. that will shoot up your sugar like anything, very high glycemic index. He's talking about green jackfruit and in that making a powder of it and then taking it with a 0.2% reduction in A1C, which he showed. Okay, so I think we will stop there. A lot of questions. I hope I've answered all the questions. Over to Maling.
Very happy to see the questions from the participants. I guess so many questions have attended the session keenly. And only one question lastly, few of people watch our YouTube also. COVID complicate the diabetes patient. Recent second wave, many diabetes caught with COVID during recovery stage, their sugar levels increased and lead to death. What is the reason behind, sir?
From the beginning of COVID, even in the first wave of COVID, right from Wuhan, from the first series that we heard of in January 2020 itself, we knew that those who got hospitalized, those who became serious, those who were admitted in ICU, and those who died, 60% of them had either diabetes or hypertension or both, that is non-communicable disease. And diabetes is present in more than 30-40%. The second wave, what we have learned is not only the diabetic patients do badly, but they develop other complications like mucormycosis, which is a serious infection of the nose. You can even lose your nose or eye and so on. Very serious thing, which only in India we have seen. We have no other countries didn't see that. One of the reasons for this could be, we really don't know the main reason, but of course the main reason is uncontrolled diabetes. Their mean HbA1c is above 9. Many had 11, 12 and all that. And these are people who developed it. Second is the indiscriminate use of steroids. Steroids were used. Of course, steroids is life-saving. And the ICU, when your BP is dropping, oxygen is dropping, we give steroid, your life, is saved. But if they indiscriminately continue it in very massive doses for a very long time, that can precipitate uncontrolled diabetes. Those who have control also, it makes them uncontrolled. And then in that uncontrolled diabetes, fungus infections come very often, and mucormycosis is one of them. So the whole, that is why when this started coming, in May, when we heard of the mucormycosis thing coming in April and May, at that time I made a plea, a national plea. Let's declare June as a diabetes control month. I said, if you really control diabetes well, every Indian, the diabetes we control, mucormycosis can be wiped out. I don't know whether they really achieved it or not, but to a large extent it's taken up by the diabetes community. Today, mucormycosis has gone down. You're not hearing of the same mucormycosis which we heard just 2 months ago, because people have become aware of the diabetes. The steroid use has also been rationalized. Now they're saying when to use, what dose, for how long. They were using it for like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's meant to be used for a short term, but they were using it in massive doses for a very long time. So all that, I think that indiscriminate use would have contributed to it. Basic thing is control the diabetes well. If you want to see my own series, I can at least show you 2,000, 3,000 patients of mine who developed COVID. Nothing happened to them. They stayed at home. They didn't even go to hospital because their A1C is so beautifully controlled. They're like a non-diabetic. They'll tell me I got COVID. I'll say, okay, take rest at home. After 1 week, they'll say, now perfectly all right, doctor. Can I start going about? I said, yeah, after a 2-week period, you can go about. They're all going about normally. What happened to them? They didn't get into ICU. They didn't get mucormycosis. They didn't get in, because HbA1c is controlled. Ultimately, it all comes down to control of diabetes. Not like if you're a diabetic, you're doomed. It's not like that. You're a bad diabetic, badly controlled diabetic. Then you may get all these problems. Not every diabetic is at risk. Somebody asked about herbal, Professor Dato, herbal Ayurveda, Siddha medicines. Well, they are all, used by different practitioners, and one cannot, say that they don't have any effect or anything like that. All of them have been used, and some systems are, the Ayurvedic doctors have also been treating, Siddha doctor also been treating, Unani doctor also been treating. All these people have been treating. But if you want a 360 kind of overview on the subject, I believe they'll all work in the early stages, not when HbA1c is 11.7, 12.5, blood sugar is 400, 500. These drugs are milder drugs. They are meant for pre-diabetes, early diabetes, first 5 years of diabetes. They'll work very well. In general, I've done reviews. I've also done trials on many Ayurvedic drugs myself. I have done 1 or 2 Siddha drugs also I've tried. About 0.5% to 1%, 0.8% reduction in A1C, which is not bad. We were able to get that. But I think at that stage, diet and exercise forms the main thing. Medicines, whether it's allopathic or thing, is only secondary. It's a diet, exercise, weight reduction, stress reduction, pranayama, meditation. These are the most important thing. But as your diabetes progresses, now suppose you're in an ICU with the 400 milligram blood sugar, you're on steroid, your sugar is going up, and your hypoxia is dropping. Well, can you give Ayurvedic drug at that time? So I mean, you must use your common sense when to use. At that time, even none of the tablets will work. None of my anti-diabetic drugs will work there. Only insulin will work. Only insulin will save your life. If you try anything else, you'll die. Okay. So no other tablet will work at that time. It's dangerous also. They may produce side effects also. So you must know each patient when to individualize. And if you individualize that, then there is no problem. Okay.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohan sir, for answering patiently. And I request you to kindly talk 1 minute about this book, Making Excellence a Habit.
Okay, I can see that my letter to you, you have preserved. And somehow
Yes,
it does. Oh, that's the.
Yeah, this is
The message. That's a message I sent you. Okay, that's for your. Okay.
For the public, just to talk.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my autobiography, which I talked about, and making excellence a habit. The reason I wrote this book is because there are so many life learnings that I learned. As I told you, I joined my father when I was 18. And not many people in the world have had that opportunity to work with a specialist father from the age of 18. So I had this unique opportunity. And also now my daughter and son-in-law are also there. So 3 generations, we have been doing only one disease, only one diabetes we have been treating. So I thought we should put it down, what is that which really is needed? It's not a treatment book at all, but for a successful life, not just as a doctor, but although the second line says secret to building world healthcare, that is added by Penguin. I didn't agree to that. I said making excellence a habit is enough. That's what I'm saying. How do you make excellence a habit? How do you? So it talks about passion, it talks about focus, it talks about resilience, it talks about hard work, it talks about all the ingredients which are needed for success. And so if you have not read this book, it's a bestseller in Amazon. So please read the book, and it will be quite inspirational, I think, to all of you. I don't think it's available outside India, because Amazon India only is selling it. The book was published in India, but in India itself, it's been a phenomenal success. And this, of course, is a letter I wrote to Mahalingam when he formed I said, newly formed Association of Healthcare Management. So I've been following Mahalingam's work for very long time. And this is one of the 11. He told me he's starting this association, AHMP. This was a letter which I wrote to him at that time. So Mahalingam,
thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Spend more than an hour with question and answer. And we are planning to organize, there is a PEP program in various topics. The next topic for next month will be on pediatric and college by Dr. Neminathan from Coimbatore. And now over to Mr. Ratinam. Further.
Okay, thank you, Mahalingam. On behalf of AHMP India, it is a privilege and pleasure to thank Padma Shri Dr. V. Mohan, world-renowned leading diabetologist, for giving us major insights to clear the hype and showcasing the reality on diabetes. Our special thanks to participants from India and to international participants for making this virtual event a grand success. Thanks one and all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. It's a great pleasure to participate. With your permission, I'll leave now. Wish you all the very best. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you, Mr. Mahalingam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good.